Everyone, this is what we trained for. Their forces are coming. Load up our weapons. Be ready to fire.
Mr. Magnetic, I have your good luck pendant for this battle that may come soon. Also some soothing Geolavin tea.
Thank you, Joffrey.
Can I help out?
You've done enough. Why don't you leave now?
Thank you for the tea, Joffrey.
No problem, Lady Rosette.
What can I do, Rosette? I don't like this feeling. People are gonna die.
It's okay. We're warriors. We've survived this long. We'll pull through.
Look at where we are. This is where your main base is. How are you gonna fight?
Hey, calm down. Look at me. We can do it. Trust me. As for what you should do what you do best.
Talking about media isn't gonna do anything in the face of a battle.
Do it because you love it. It doesn't matter what's happening right now. After all, before I joined the Freedom Warriors, I loved to invent new devices.
That's different. I can't review cartoons to fight evil. Doing something like that isn't heroic.
We must follow our passions. If we live in squalor and fear, then Cathalon is already won.
Right.
You also have to finish what you started, to criticize. You have no idea how much of a blessing that is in this universe. I can't keep talking to you right now. I have some preparations for the battle. There are some delicate procedures.
Wow. Thanks. Justice League was one of the best shows of the 2000s, and following the very strong finale of the series, there was a sequel series produced called Justice League Unlimited, which was even more ambitious than the original. They could not keep doing the Justice League 1 hour 2-parter formula for single episodes though. It was not going to sell. And the lack of cuteness to the art style and shippability that Teen Titans had already makes this lack female appeal. No child has the attention span for 1 hour, so Justice League viewership stuck only to boys over 13. From a business standpoint, this was not acceptable. Even though I preferred how Justice League liked to take its time to build up each conflict, and I hate to admit this, Justice League Unlimited is even better. The storytelling is better, the first story arc is very thought-provoking. There are a lot more comedic episodes, the inclusion of a huge ensemble cast adds more life to this universe they created, and these characters develop more and more personality in JLU. I can't talk about that much stuff in this review because of how much stuff there is in this show, so if I leave anything out, I'm sorry. Nah, screw that. So, after the Justice League stopped the Thanagarians and lost Hawkgirl, they decided to prevent another birdemic by recruiting a massive number of superheroes to maintain order in the world, with Jean sending them out to perform missions wherever necessary. This series expands the ensemble cast from 7 characters to, a bunch. Whereas Teen Titans made its 5th season about the recruiting process, the start of Justice League Unlimited puts us years after the invasion, and the Justice League has essentially finished. In addition, they've rebuilt their watchtower to be even bigger, and it changed from traditional animation to CGI. And they also have an entire fleet of their jets, as well as a Star Trek-style teleporter in the watchtower as well. Damn, the League's really improved its productivity. Alright, since I'm an internet reviewer, I need to find something to complain about or else I might just phase out of existence. The show is very good, but I take some issue with some small things. First, they changed a fantastic and building opening theme to a generic one. I like parts of it, but the first one is just so much better. It does reflect the show accurately though. It's quicker, there's a lot less build-up, and they swapped out the cheap CGI models for illustration and clips from episodes. Well, if you're missing the cheap CG, don't worry, the show has a lot more of that. It's usually okay, but the absolute worst case of this is an episode in the early first season called Fearful Cemetery, where Supergirl fights a robot in a nightmare, and the attempt to fuse the CG with the traditional animation is god-awful. In the first season especially, quite often the intro to the show is mixed with clips of the episodes we're about to see, which isn't really a problem usually, but sometimes it can comedically spoil a major moment. For example, there's an episode called For the Man Who Has Everything. The opening scene is Batman and Wonder Woman going to meet Superman on his birthday, and finding he's been put in a trance-like state by someone. We have no idea who it is, and we're left in suspense. Until the intro starts and we see multiple clips of Wonder Woman and Superman fighting Mongol. Following that, we're given quite a dramatic scene where Mongol reveals himself and says that by putting Superman under the effects of the Paradise simulating plant, no one in the Justice League can stop him. That's a terrible plan, by the way, since there's 50 Leaguers they can bust out Mongol, including Orion and Martian Manhunter. And Mongol seems to have come alone because there's not a single person assisting him the entire episode, but whatever. The scene is still treated as a dramatic reveal. So, those are the technical issues. The first episode features Green Arrow being recruited by the Justice League at the request of Batman, because the guy represents the more normal, non-superpowered beings. Throughout the series, it's made abundantly clear that he's one of the main characters, getting more major screen time than almost all the other characters outside the original 7. The first episode also covers Supergirl's first mission, because in Superman the Animated Series, she was just kinda there. The character cast for Justice League Unlimited rocks. I can't think of a character I completely abhor or feels badly written. You'd think with the massive number of characters there'd be promises of many weak links, but the minor characters do what they need to do just fine, and the major ones are all very relatable, even if not very likable. Like Stargirl. Though not all the characters are that well defined in terms of their individuality, like the fact that there's a character called The Atom, who is not to be confused with Captain Atom, who is not to be confused with Captain Marvel. And then there's Stargirl, whose power resembles Dr. Light, and whose design is similar to Supergirl mixed with Huntress. Some of the new characters are great. There's Green Arrow, who acts as a moral compass for the Justice League, fights without superpowers, and is pretty sharp-witted. Additionally, he's dating Black Canary, a beautiful motorcycle babe with the ability to kill you by screaming. Man, I'd like to hear her scream. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked there. Green Arrow's best moment is the moment where he gets Canary to fall for him, by fighting Canary's trainer, Wildcat, who is addicted to an underground fighting ring, and making him think he murdered a man. Seriously, it's awesome.
I don't have any powers, and you're still too old to knock me out.
Get up! I'm not done! No, I'm out. And this time, I mean it.
I'm sorry.
I'm not. It's a stunner. Puts you in metabolic stasis for a few minutes.
You wanted him to see what it would feel like to kill someone.
Think it worked?
It worked.
However, Green Arrow doesn't reach the astonishingly charming quirkiness of The Question. This guy is quite possibly the most popular character in this series. He is a master detective, conspiracy buff, and watchman. He's so weird, but his dialogue and moments are simply great, whether he's being funny or being the ballsiest guy ever when he challenges Superman and Galatea fearlessly, when there's a chance that he was gonna die.
It bites having someone in your head, doesn't it?
You don't know what you're talking about.
No. Prove it. Kill me.
This is also aided by the fact that Jeffrey Combs does his voice perfectly.
Fell in love again. What am I gonna tell my friends? It just happened. You walked in my door, and now I don't wanna be alone no more. Oops, I've done it. Told you how I feel. Just hope this time that our love is real.
I imagine the creator said something like, "Oh, Jeff, you were supposed to play Scarecrow in this series, but Warner Brothers is being asinine, so we want you to play Vic Sage instead." This is a series with consequences, not just consequences within the context of the show, but for actions in the past. Many episodes, and especially the first major story arc of the series, are about the result or continuation of an episode of a previous series. For example, there's an episode called Wake the Dead, the episode that marks Hawkgirl's return to the Justice League. Solomon Grundy comes back stronger than he ever was, awoken by a powerful spell, and Hawkgirl is the one who has to kill him because she has the mace that disrupts magic. This expands upon the friendship the two characters developed in the Justice League episode where Grundy died. Later, there's an episode that details what happens to Thanagar because Hawkgirl would not let Crow Tilek succeed in his mission. They lost the war, and Crow's lieutenants tried to exact vengeance on Shira because they have nothing left but revenge. Another example would be The Return, where Amazo comes back to kill Lex Luthor, so he's forced to take cover inside a barbershop.
Gotta hand it to you, Luthor. Nobody would think to look for you here.
After looking at the blueprints with the Atom to build a nanotech disassembler, it doesn't work, and Amazo comes to Luthor instead of looking for revenge, just to ask what his purpose is. Luthor is amused by this and feels pity for the android. Also, there's a noteworthy episode called The Greatest Story Never Told, which is about this unlikable superhero named Booster Gold from the future, and his robot sidekick, Fry.
This is untrue.
And while there is a supervillain named Mordru that requires the entire League to fight him, Booster has to deal with another disaster in the form of a mini black hole. No one will ever know he saved the world as well, except the woman he met. And he stopped acting so childish. It's an episode that developed a character that we've never met, and we never heard from again. But it's very good because it tells us that this story is bigger than just Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman or Green Arrow or The Question or Black Canary or Huntress. This is everyone's story. The main story arc of the first 2 seasons is about a group called Cadmus, a government program funded by Lex Luthor that was started to create countermeasures in case the Justice League ever goes rogue. This would not work that well if not for the episode A Better World in the original Justice League, where that actually happened when the Superman there killed President Luthor and the Justice Lords, followed by imposing their totalitarian will on the populace. If you forgot all the plot points, it's okay, here's the whole thing really fast. The single most important and one of the best episodes in the series is called A Better World. This episode's gonna require going into detail. The Justice League can go to their universe. It features an opening where the Justice League is antagonist Luthor's headquarters. Luthor and Superman have an exchange where Luthor finally breaks the man and leaves the kills Superman. So Luthor and Superman promptly murders Lex Luthor. This is signed up with the President of the United States. It skips to 2 years later, and the Justice League are now behind the Justice League, clearly identified by new costumes. And look, Sean doesn't dress like a male stripper anymore. The rest of this might be a permanent federal series where you were faked out. The real Justice League is discovered by the Justice Lord Batman. Remember why I said Batman has superhuman intelligence in the series? This episode sticks in your mind because it all comes back in Unlimited. This series pays off all the setups of the previous series in DCAU, becoming much more serialized than the previous shows, and the arc built itself around the most thought-provoking and introspective episode of the previous series. This is adult-oriented storytelling here. The majority of the antagonists of this arc are not truly evil. They're just scared of what the superhumans can do. It's like the human argument against the mutants in X-Men related media. Sure, the people are right to be afraid of mutants. You can't really equate being LGBT or being a certain race to being able to shoot lasers out of your eyes. The government has many reasons to be scared. The Justice League has like 50 superpowered members, and it's got a teleporter in its space station that can send anyone anywhere on the planet. And then they have a satellite cannon that has the power of a nuclear warhead. If the Justice League at any point wants to take over the world, they can.
And Cadmus, I love the fact that Cadmus, they're not twirling their mustaches. They really think what they're doing is good.
Yeah.
One of the first things we see about Cadmus is early in the first season. At the end of Superman, the animated series, when Superman was brainwashed by Darkseid and both Superman and Supergirl were knocked out and taken in by the government, Dr. Hamilton, a staple character of Superman the animated series, made a clone of Supergirl in Justice League Unlimited who used the design of Power Girl, called Galatea. Many other details contribute to the arc in several episodes of the series. It's revealed that Doomsday was a creation of Cadmus that was conditioned to hate Superman. He returns and loses Superman in a fight, and they send him off to the Phantom Zone, an empty dimension. It's actions like these that make people like Batman question the League's jurisdiction. In an episode where the Justice League faced off against a destructive technological force called Darkheart, Jean reveals the existence of the Watchtower satellite cannon, which disturbs the Army General Eiling, who was there. Luthor begins his campaign to run for president. Captain Marvel, a kid with the magical ability to turn into a superpowered man, is manipulated by Lex Luthor to fight Superman, which damages the public view of the Justice League. Oh, and while I'm on the subject, that episode has Superman acting at his most douchey.
This is pretty sloppy for Lex.
He's the most arrogant human being on the planet. He wants us to know.
Maybe.
Maybe?
I'll go to the Watchtower, see if the Atom can find something I missed.
Since when do you miss anything?
Since when do you jump to conclusions without evidence?
Luthor at his most deliciously Machiavellian, as well as the most awesomely Dragon Ball-esque fight scene in DCAU. The resolution to the Cadmus arc is the 4-part season finale. The Question discovers footage of Justice Lord Superman killing President Luthor, while Captain Atom, a superhero with the ability to manipulate radiation, is called back into service by the US Army. The Question calls out Superman for walking down the path of Justice Lords, and if Luthor becomes president and manages to kill the Flash like he did, the Justice League is going to go to war with the government and devastate the Earth. So this story's core is pretty freaking amazing. It gets better. The Question decides that he has to kill Luthor to stop this scenario, except Luthor mysteriously has super strength and was not actually planning on being president.
That's right, conspiracy buff. I spent $75 million on a fake presidential campaign. All just to tick Superman off.
Wait a second. Your plan was to spend $75 million to piss off Superman. Why is it that when it's worded like that, it sounds like the worst thing you could possibly do? So Question's girlfriend, Huntress, who has the most impractical battle gear ever, goes with Superman to save him, and Superman is forced to battle Captain Atom, who is back serving the government. Superman has an incredibly brutal fight with him and takes him back. While having a debate on whether or not to strike Cadmus back, Lex Luthor hacks the satellite cannon and shoots an empty Cadmus base, sparking the battle. The original 7 members of the League, minus Batman, decide to turn themselves in to quell the fighting. In the battle, Supergirl manages to defeat Galatea. A major subplot of this arc is also the verbal face-offs Batman has against Amanda Waller, and much to her credit, she's probably the only character who can hold off Batman in an argument. These scenes very much embody the main conflict of the Cadmus story.
Mine are bigger than yours. Why don't we step into the light together? I'm sure the American people will be just as interested in your activities as mine. Secret weapons, illegal cloning experiments, bypassing Congress.
In another dimension, 7 of you overthrew the government and assassinated the president. We're the good guys, protecting our country from a very real threat. You. Yes, Mr. President.
Call off the missile.
So in the end, Batman corners Luthor, who is building a new body, that of Amazo, the invincible power-copying android. He was able to do this when he saw the blueprints of the first Amazo, and it turns out he has a photographic memory, like Brother Blood.
Did you think someone with my mental abilities wouldn't have a photographic memory?
And I suspect you have a photographic memory.
I'm too modest to boast.
The rest of the original 7 come to aid with Amanda Waller, and we find that the true mastermind of the arc is Brainiac, who has been in Lex Luthor's body ever since the mid-seasons of Superman the Animated Series, and during the series, he's given Lex super strength, cured his kryptonite cancer, and guided his plans. This is actually foreshadowed in the episode titled Panic in the Sky. It's the name of a DC crossover where Brainiac was the bad guy, but you would have to be some sort of super geek to know that. This direction is kind of a cop-out, but the writers themselves said they had no idea how to end this story arc, and I agree, because this story was about moral ambiguity. But the League needed to be the heroes, so they brought in Brainiac, the most dreaded force in DCAU. Seriously, if Darkseid shows his only believable display of fear against you, you are living terror.
But what is it?
It's death.
So, Luthor and Brainiac decide to fuse into one, mixing Luthor's imagination and ambition with Brainiac's knowledge and power. There's a fight scene where the Justice League fight the Justice Lords created by the supervillain, and it all seems lost before the Flash pulls a Deus Ex Machina and goes so fast he completely destroys Brainiac. Except, unlike whenever Teen Titans had a Deus Ex Machina, this one has some consequences, as it almost causes him to fade out of existence. Afterwards, Superman is about to dissolve the Justice League.
This is the end.
But then...
Says who? You remember what we did yesterday? We saved the world. Again. You don't think that has any value? Well, think again, pal. The Justice League goes on, with or without you. Look, nobody can question your service or commitment to making things better. If you're quitting because you think you've already done your fair share, fine. We'll throw you a parade. But if you're quitting because it's easier than continuing the fight, then you're not the heroes we all thought you were. The world needs the Justice League, and the Justice League needs you, Superman.
All right. Okay. But there are going to have to be some changes.
Wow, that was surprisingly effective. How to stop Superman from closing the Justice League. Tell him to stop being such a little bitch. The original series finale is called Epilogue, but I'm gonna withhold talking about it until I eventually get to Batman Beyond. It'll be much more fitting then. Just know that in terms of finales, it's the most absolute one. So, the second major story arc is about Grodd returning to the spotlight, forming a legion of supervillains, and his first course of action is to recruit Luthor by enticing him with a piece of Brainiac. Basically, at this point, the League has become so efficient at keeping the world safe that the supervillains have to band together in order to not be overwhelmed. And what's more, Grodd has wired his agents' minds to show it out if they're caught, keeping the identity and location of his League of Villains secret. Wow, he's really good at this. There's also an episode that's a small continuation of the Cadmus arc. General Wade Eiling, a major player in Cadmus voiced by J.K. Simmons, still distrusts the Justice League, so he takes a strength-augmenting potion called the Captain Nazi Serum to be ready to fight them. Ironically, he fights a bunch of non-superpowered members of the League, including Green Arrow, Vigilante, Stargirl, Stripes, Shiny Knight, Crimson Avenger, no idea who this guy is, and a surprise appearance from Speedy, voiced by his Teen Titans voice actor. By the way, does that count as a crossover? Before in this series, no one felt like they were the main character. Some characters like Green Arrow get more screen times than others like Vigilante, but essentially it's everyone's story. This season dispenses with that and interestingly makes the main character Lex Luthor. Apparently either the writers or fans were so satisfied with how he almost completely outsmarted everyone in the previous arc that he's the primary figure in this season as well. The most revisited plot thread is the fact that ever since fusing with Brainiac, he's got kind of a crush on the machine and wants to be reunited with it and the sheer knowledge the Kryptonian beast possessed. He wants to become one with him again, if you get my drift. So throughout the season, Luthor works with Grodd and eventually takes over the Legion of Doom, and in the finale, we'll get to that. Oh, and since I'm talking about Grodd, I've gotta say, the voice cast and voice acting is pretty amazing in this series. It feels at this point a lot of people are familiar with these roles. We have the original 7 Leaguers and Clancy Brown as Lex Luthor. Kevin Conroy and Clancy Brown stand out a lot in the voice roles because they were playing these characters for about a decade at this point. Powers Booth is a good sound for Grodd. John C. McGinley plays the Atom, a role where he's playing against types since he tends to be a sharp-witted ass clown. Ron Perlman is Orion, and if you listen, he uses a voice similar to the one he uses for Slade.
Hello, Father.
And there's Juliet Landau as Tala, a promiscuous witch. Nathan Fillion gets to be Vigilante, a gunslinging cowboy-looking hero. The list goes on. This show is not really known for being gut-bustingly funny. All the comedy is written right into the dialogue. However, this is not the case with an episode called The Great Brain Robbery, which is probably the funniest in the series. Luthor, as the leader of the Legion of Doom, switches bodies with the Flash, and the Flash in Luthor's body has to not be discovered by the supervillains by acting incredibly inconspicuous.
What? You gonna wash your hands? No, 'cause I'm evil. My fellow bad guys, I, Lex Luthor, your leader, will speak now about my, Lex Luthor's plan. My villainous plan. Question the plan at your peril. Any questions?
We all get a cut, right?
Watch your step, my evil minion. You presume too much. One of these days, you'll go too far.
Also, there's this gag of Luthor in Flash's body.
Lex, you're having a difficult day. If nothing else, I can at least learn the Flash's secret identity. I have no idea who this is.
There's a treasure trove of enjoyment in this episode. It's fun on a button. So this arc, as is clear, is not nearly as thought-provoking as the first one was on the superhero genre, but the story makes sense and has enough motivation and emotion. So Grodd took many steps to make sure his society remains secret, and actually tries to make them all into friends with a common goal to survive against the Justice League instead of ruling with an iron fist. However, his ultimate goal was to make every human into apes, which Luthor calls out as asinine before he took over. Oh, I just remembered something to complain about. Supergirl. Her story in the first arc is just her dealing with her evil clone, and the only reason she gets an upper hand in that battle is because she taunts her clone with her realness. Like she's a gangster rapper or something.
You know what? No matter how bad you beat me, I'm real. Not a clone. Shut up.
It's dumb. She wants to not live in Superman's shadow and stuff in the third season, but the way it's resolved is that while she's kidnapped into the future by Brainiac's heroic descendant, they decide that they're in love even though they've only hung around each other for like one day, so she stays in the future. Yeah, this plot thread's kind of lacking. In the second to last episode, it's completely from the view of the supervillains who are going out to space, near Apokolips where Brainiac was destroyed. The whole Luthor being the protagonist thing is made very clear here. Basically, there's a huge revolt from the supporters of Grodd who find that Luthor is completely insane and his plan is gonna fail. Eventually, Grodd and Luthor face off, and Luthor throws Grodd out of an airlock into a pretty gruesome alien death. Luthor introduces a machine he plans to hook Tala onto in order to use her magic to recreate Brainiac from the remains. Time freezes, and this character Metron, who we have never met before, shows up to tell Luthor not to do this. Of course, he does, and instead of Brainiac, we get Darkseid this time, with Brainiac's technology. He thanks the Legion by destroying their base. Darkseid goes to Apokolips to reunite his planet, and launches his invasion of Earth. He was planning on doing that for a while, but in an episode of Superman, the planet New Genesis protected Earth. Now Darkseid's coming back just to say screw that. So cool, if there's gonna be a showdown against an ultimate villain, it might as well be Darkseid. He's definitely up there. In the grand finale, the surviving Legion of Doom members go to the Justice League to protect the Earth. Superman understandably doesn't trust him because, you know.
It's Lex flippin' Luthor.
The finale has half of it being a ton of character cameos and almost every hero character gets to kick the ass of Darkseid's forces. The other half is a very long and exciting extended fight scene of Batman, Superman, and Luthor fighting Darkseid. Darkseid even does his best impression of Bane. Metron eventually takes Luthor to a mysterious place called the Source Wall. Eventually, after getting beaten up pretty badly by Darkseid, Superman releases all his strength, which he's been holding back out of habit and fear of hurting people. This leads to quite possibly the most dramatic punch in the history of punches. The upper hand doesn't last very long, however, because Darkseid unveils his hidden weapon, the Agony Matrix, something that causes the worst pain and is beyond imagination. Just before Darkseid's about to cut out Superman's heart, Luthor comes and shows Darkseid the anti-life equation, the MacGuffin he's been obsessed with since the beginning. Darkseid and Luthor both disappear when they touch it, for some reason. Alright, so Luthor just saved the whole universe, cementing him as the hero of this season. Additionally, this kind of means that Darkseid's ultimate plan of obtaining the anti-life equation and destroying all free will to resist him would have failed because he would have just become part of the Source Wall. Huh. Alright, maybe the story to this ending is kinda bad. Especially since retroactively this means that Darkseid in like the 9 years he's been around was never really in danger of destroying all free will. So eventually, after the forces of Apocalypse withdraw, the League give the members of the Legion of Doom a 5-minute head start to leave. Giganta kisses Flash with no build-up whatsoever, and the adventure continues. I'm not kidding, by the way. That's the line they end the show on.
And the adventure continues.
Still, this finale is enjoyable simply because of the endless action, and it's an improved resolution to the Superman, Darkseid, and Lex Luthor struggle, even over Twilight, which was very good. This doesn't top the Cadmus arc in depth, but it feels like a very well executed children's superhero show with stakes and strong characters. Justice League Unlimited was one of the best animated shows of the previous decade and one worth noting among all of them. It didn't rely on a shipping fan base like Teen Titans or Avatar The Last Airbender. It didn't have to dumb this down for children or for common viewers. It felt like an adaptation that wanted to tell a story that people could enjoy, that had depth. It was a bit more child-friendly than the original Justice League, but it holds on to that intensity and edge. This is my long-winded way of saying it's a masterpiece of children's animation.
Progress is coming along.
Everyone, come quickly! We're getting a video call from the FF!
Incoming call from the Freedom Fighters.
Bring up a visual.
Mr. Magnetic, we meet again.
Zandos.
Hello, Freedom Warriors. It looks like you're cornered. We have your base surrounded. I am ordered by my master to make this offer to you. Anyone who surrenders now will be granted complete amnesty for their participation in the treason. Anyone except for the leaders of the Freedom Warriors, Mr. Magnetic, Mystic, Carrion Collar, Slime, Bloodhunter, and Lady Rosette, you will be publicly executed. In fact, as a favor, Cathlon even said he'd allow me to kill you myself, Double M. Anyone who fights back, I will personally see to it you suffer before your lives end.
This ends tonight.
And one more note, the Master added. He told me to address a kid who calls himself the Watcher.
What, me? Am I getting executed too?
Cathlon is going to come here to personally thank you for leading him to the Freedom Warriors base. He's so appreciative of the part you play that he's willing to give you nobleman status to rule over the planet Olivoy, which I believe is your planet, Mr. Magnetic. Everyone, let's give our friend a hand. Anyone who wishes to surrender, you have 1 hour.